Mad 2020 starts now.
Hey, I'm Jim Cramer, and we are less than 1 month away from the election. Are you excited for it to finally be over? That means no more political ads for at least a year.
I'm Joni Ernst, and I approve this message because Washington's full of big spenders. Let's make them squeal.
Now, for those of you feeling stressed, it's Lana, and she says, please subscribe right meow. Also, Bernie was robbed? Wow, I think Lana might be a socialist. Regardless, it is time for my final updated predictions for the 2020 election, including both the presidency and the Senate. Now, I've already made 2 detailed videos predicting what would happen months ago, but since then, 4 major events have occurred. First, legendary Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has passed away. Now, this could remind Republicans why they supported Donald Trump, but it could also motivate Biden's liberal base to get out the vote. Second, some of Trump's tax returns were released in a bombshell New York Times report showing that Trump has been paying less in taxes than most middle-class Americans. Now, this was clearly released at the perfect time, right before the debate, to hurt Trump, but it remains to be seen how much of a difference it will actually make. Third is shit show number 1, aka the first debate.
Vice President Biden, you are holding much smaller events with
nobody will show up.
People with
What's true? Nobody shows up to his rallies.
All right.
Did you use the word smart?
You're the worst president America has ever had.
As I said in my recent debate review video, Biden probably came out slightly better than Trump, but overall, I doubt it will make much of a difference in the end. And then finally, right after the debate, or perhaps before, Trump contracted coronavirus. Now, it's difficult to say how much this will actually impact the race, but I actually created a video back in May about how getting COVID could help Trump. But as of now, it's more likely to hurt him, as it puts the entire campaign into chaos at the worst time. And if all that wasn't bad enough, many big conservative donors now see Trump's presidency as a lost cause and are reallocating funds to protect that Republican Senate. So Biden actually has a cash-on-hand advantage now against Trump. But let me be clear, it is definitely still possible for Donald Trump to win. And if he did, it would look something like this. But his voting has already begun, and Trump's campaign has been crippled by the virus he's failed to control. The question at this point is less likely about who will win, but instead more about the margin of victory. Remember that to win in the Electoral College, a candidate needs to hit 270 delegates. So if you look at the map and add in states with a likelihood of 90% or more, Biden is essentially guaranteed 212 delegates from the start. Then if you add in states with a likelihood of 80% or more, thanks to the Rust Belt, Biden has already won with 279 delegates. And while we all know that polling can be wrong sometimes, Biden's lead in the Midwest has been far larger and more stable than Hillary Clinton's in 2016. In the end, whoever wins Pennsylvania will win the presidency. And Trump knows this, by the way, which is why he keeps specifically calling out Philadelphia over unproven allegations of electoral fraud.
In Philadelphia, they went in to watch. They were called poll watchers, a very safe, very nice thing. They were thrown out. They weren't allowed to watch. You know why? Because bad things happen in Philadelphia, bad things.
So at this point, Trump's best case scenario is winning all of the remaining states, which could happen, but I'm expecting Biden will probably win Arizona and North Carolina, propelled by the Senate races in those states, in addition to demographic shifts. Of the states remaining, all of them are controlled by Republicans, which makes them particularly vulnerable to cheating and voter suppression. It's hard to gauge the potential for this to change the election, though. So I'm going to lean on the safe side, and I'm going to give Trump 2 extra points for each state, thus giving Trump the edge in Texas, Georgia, and Iowa. That leaves us with only 2 states left: Florida and Ohio. Now, I've gone back and forth on these a million times. 538 gives Biden a slight edge in both, but I'm going to lean on the safe side and give Ohio to Trump but Florida to Biden, making this my final 2020 election prediction. Biden 334 to Trump 204. Next, let's see how the presidential election affects that Senate map. One of the most important factors to look at in these statewide races is whether a Senate candidate is polling above or below the top of the ticket. For example, former astronaut and Democratic Senate candidate Mark Kelly is polling well above Biden in Arizona. So if Biden wins or barely loses Arizona, you can be sure that Kelly will come out ahead. But before we get to Arizona, let's once again start off with the Senate races that are pretty much guaranteed, with a likelihood of 90% or more, leaving us with roughly 14 races. Next, let's include the states with a likelihood of 75% or above. Now, these races could go a different way, but it's extremely unlikely. In Alabama, Democratic incumbent Doug Jones is a decent candidate who is polling way above Joe Biden, but since Trump will easily win Alabama, that gives Republican opponent Tommy Tuberville a huge edge. Now, same reasoning in Kansas, where Democrat and Dr. Barbara Boyer has recently seen an uptick in support against Republican Roger Marshall, but it still probably won't be enough to beat Trump's edge at the top of the ticket. In Texas, even if Biden had a chance of winning there, Republican incumbent John Cornyn is polling way ahead of Trump, and he has an insane cash advantage over Democrat MJ Hager. And then lastly, in Colorado, while Republican incumbent Cory Gardner is polling above Trump, it probably won't be enough to save him from a loss against his Democratic opponent, John Hickenlooper. So what we have left are 9 races that could still go either way. In Alaska, Republican incumbent Dan Sullivan is suddenly in a tight race with Democrat and Dr. Al Gross. I expect Alaska to stay red, but Republicans are playing catch-up in a state they weren't even expecting to be in contention. Also, similar situation in South Carolina, where incumbent Republican Lindsey Graham is fighting an increasingly close race against Democratic challenger Jamie Harrison. I expect Trump will help Lindsey barely eke out a win here, but Harrison has been a strong challenger. Lastly, thanks to rampant voter suppression and cheating, I expect Georgia will also stay red in the end for both of those races. Now, on the flip side, Democrats are likely to pick up Maine and Arizona. In Maine, Democratic challenger Sarah Gideon is taking on incumbent Susan Collins, and so far she's been more than up to the task, raising more money and polling ahead. Similarly, in Arizona, Democratic challenger Mark Kelly has run a fantastic campaign, raising more money and polling well ahead of incumbent Martha McSally, despite being in a traditionally red state. Which leaves us with 3 states that are essentially 50-50. North Carolina, Iowa, and Montana. First up, North Carolina Senate race has recently been shaken up from both sides. Incumbent Tom Tillis just tested positive for COVID, meaning he won't be able to campaign for a while. Additionally, it just came out that his opponent, Democrat Cal Cunningham, has been sexting a California strategist who isn't his wife. Nevertheless, I'm going to give Democrats the edge on this one, but by a very thin margin. In Iowa, incumbent Joni Ernst is fighting an increasingly close race against Democrat Teresa Greenfield, but Ernst has a fundraising advantage as of now. Meanwhile, Montana, incumbent Steve Daines has a slight polling edge against Democrat and current governor Steve Bullock, but they have roughly equal cash on hand. So if Biden overperforms, then Democrats will likely win these seats, but I'm going to lean on the safe side once again and predict that both stay red at the end of the day, leaving us with a 50-50 split, which means that Democrats would barely retake the Senate if Joe Biden wins, of course. Alright, so that is my final 2020 prediction. So, unless something crazy happens between now and Election Day, I'm not planning on doing any further updates. So, I hope you enjoyed, and be sure to hit that subscribe button, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Also, regardless of what outcome you expect, please remember to vote early and follow all the rules carefully if you're voting by mail. This may be the most important election in American history, so act like it, and remember to donate, volunteer time, more info in the description. But until next time, I am Leo Ashe. Vote and stay angry.